So, and it's supposed to be a minute. So I'm going to see how well I do. Okay. Each year, over $1 billion in research grants are given to 5 major universities here in the West. Hundreds of new software innovations are created by researchers with these funds. However, very few of these innovations ever see the light of day and get to market. Universities just are not well set up to get software products to market. So Summit Venture Studio solves this problem by licensing these underdeveloped software products from our 5 partner universities. And then our dev teams develop the products and get them market ready and acquire first paying customers. As we develop these innovative software products, we also partner with established companies who are searching for new products to add to their mix, but don't want to go through the R&D process. So our studio then sells our validated and launched products to our corporate exit partners, and that's how we make money. We have 5 companies already in our portfolio, a strong pipeline of deals from our university partners, and we're currently raising funds to develop new products that are already in our discovery pipeline. We'd love to work with you to get these amazing products that are trapped at universities out to market. Thanks. Okay, I need feedback.
So Taylor, who are you aiming at? Are you aiming at getting more universities to give you more stuff on the inflow side, or are you aiming at the big companies to take your product and now that you've developed it, to distribute it?
So those are both of our customers. Right now, it's probably more, the top priority would probably be the exit partners. I have a lot of universities that have expressed interest in partnering with us. This was specifically for an investor that wanted a 1-minute video. So that's how I tailored this one. But did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I just felt like when I came out of it, I was wondering, are you looking because you want to get more input, or are you looking for more opportunities to output? And I didn't feel that was sufficiently addressed in your presentation, or I wasn't listening, one of the two.
No, you're probably right. That's a good point. So thank you.
So your goal then is to get more investors with it, or find takeout partners from the projects once they've been matured with you?
So both. Are you asking what the purpose of this video was, or this pitch?
Yeah.
Mostly just to explain what we do in 1 minute. So I'll send it to investors specifically for this one.
2 comments. First off, the end doesn't have a clear request, a clear ask, and a way for people to know how to follow through with you. Second is the middle gets bogged down in being too wordy and too detailed. The start is really good. It captivates people to understand that magic number 5, but then we don't know what to do with that factoid and how to make sense of all of the details in between.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate the feedback, everybody.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad first pitch, but I think for what you're trying to do, realistically, you probably have 2 or 3 different customer groups. And so you probably need to tailor, like, instead of having a one size fits all, which probably won't work, you need a little bit of it tailored to, no pun intended, Taylor, but you need it tailored to the specific audience you're pitching to. So if it's an investor group, what do they get out of it? If it's a university, what do they get out of it? If it's a strategic group coming to take out one of your portfolio companies after they've succeeded, what do they get out of it, right? I think you probably can have maybe like 2/3 of that the same from one to the next, but you need like something tailored very specifically to who you're talking to.
I love it.
I would also recommend maybe practicing it a bit more, because it really kind of felt like you were reading it along. So, you've got passion, you've got stuff like, it's, pitches, right? It's like, yeah. So that would be the only other thing, is practice it so that it feels a little more natural, have a little more variation in your tone, and maybe some pauses, and yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
Sarah and Garrett. Sarah, you were awesome last night. I'm already singing your praises. But just saying, in terms of compartmentalizing the pitch, there's so many different funnel directors that you can use, so that if people self-select which one group they might think of themselves as most aligned with, then they can click that and they'll automatically get that 1 minute tailored pitch for them, and then be able to get more rather than trying to bundle it all into a single minute. Let them string along, add a Pearl minutes, and they'll get a lot further.
I love it. Thank you. That was super helpful and kind of off the cuff. Nancy, you're spot on. This is the first time that I've done it for anyone other than the 2 times that I tried to see if it was under a minute.
Well, the other thing Sarah might help you is add a little bit of a story, right? Like add someone that's had this results, or what have you done, or just add more story.
Love it. Okay. Well, I didn't want to take too much time on that. I was being a little bit selfish because I wanted some feedback. So this is perfect. I love it. I do want to make sure we have time for Gary. So Gary, if you would like, I would love to have you, again, I appreciate all the feedback. Thank you. And if you want to do that in this group, be more than happy to have you do that in the coming weeks. So just shoot me an email and we can have kind of a group feedback session like we just did, if you're interested. Gary West, do you mind just taking over now? You give us a 10 or 12 minute download of some of the principles that you use in your job around sales. Also introduce yourself, because I'm not going to, but if you don't mind, you can share your screen or do anything you like, but the mic is now yours.
Very good. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And I like what you just did, Taylor, because we're actually going to talk a little bit about value propositions. I thought, why don't we just kind of narrow in on one area? And obviously a pitch, 1 minute pitch for investors is a little bit different than a company or product value proposition, but we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm going to share my screen, and then you're going to get really kind of confused of why I'm going to share this and why I'm going to do this. Can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay. Well, good. It should say 2021 State of Sales, Small and Mid-Sized Businesses. My name is Gary West. I work with Sales Acceleration. Just a brief history about me. I grew up here in Salt Lake, did my undergrad here, and then I was hired by corporate America. My dad worked for a big company as I grew up. He kind of grew and built up a big a company that everyone would recognize here in Salt Lake. But I kind of grew up thinking that, hey, I was just going to work for the man. And so I was hired. I was moved out to San Francisco, and there I met my wife, and then just stayed in California and bounced between California and New York for about 20 years. All my kids were born in Northern California. It got really expensive in San Francisco, so every couple of years we kind of moved east, and and then about 10 years ago, moved back to Salt Lake City, in which I just love and enjoy being here. And since moving back and leaving the corporate world, I've been helping small to mid-sized businesses in helping them with their sales organizations and drive sales. Also had some great opportunities as well to do a couple startups. And so I've had that experience both in the service world as well as in the high-tech world as well too. So I know what you're all going through. Why am I showing you this? What I thought when Taylor asked that, hey, why don't you present a little bit? We just finished our 2020 evaluation as a sales organization of small to mid-sized businesses on their analysis. And I thought, what a great way to show you what's important, and to also show you where the gaps are that are out there. And so I thought maybe what we could do is just kind of go through some of them. We can go in one way or another. If you have questions, you want to jump in and want to take this in a different way, we can definitely do that. But I thought, why don't we just kind of see where we are on the state of business and see if my slides will go. Okay, so how we do our analysis is we have this tool, and I'm going to give access to everyone to a mini tool that is totally free of charge. It'll come right into your inbox, and you can do an evaluation of your business as well too. But this larger tool is our sales agility assessment. And what we do is we have business owners, founders, CEOs, or sales leaders, mostly the C-suite, that take this survey. There are 48 very in-depth questions. And then we also, as advisors, then do an analysis as well. And they cover really everything you need regarding sales, but they kind of follow into 4 different buckets: strategy, methodology, analysis, and then your organization as well. And then there's some very deep questions that uncover really the details of the operations, the tools, the methods. How are you paying for your salespeople? Your details of the organization. So it's meant to provide kind of a very in-depth analysis of what your company is doing well in, and then where you need improvement. So last year we compiled 2,355 single individual businesses. And what I'm going to show you here actually are the last 3-year trends, which I think are kind of interesting as well. This is an example of, looks like I grabbed one from 2015 that I did from a business. So this is, again, the report that comes out after we go through the analysis, but just give you a general idea of where businesses come in. That gray bar in the middle, after doing this for over 5 years, and we're probably like 15, 20,000 businesses that have gone through this. This is the average score that when we start with a business, they start with. And again, the total points are 400. This particular business you saw got 196, so slightly larger or slightly higher than the average. And then you can see it kind of breaks down into those 4 quadrants: the sales strategy, the methodology, the analysis, the organization, and such. So I thought you might be interested in seeing kind of what that looks like. So I kind of wanted to show just a high level of what some of the trends are. And this is just the overall. The SAA is the Sales Agility Assessment. The 4.0, that's our more detailed one that we do when we get really engaged. I'm going to give you access to our 1.0 that you can do yourself, and it just comes right into your inbox. But one thing that you'll see here, just at a very, very high level, is kind of the creepage here over the last couple years on those that rate just the overall poor performance when it comes to sales in those 4 quadrants. And what we found that last year we were in a very unique situation, right? We were in COVID. We thought, oh, that's probably not a really good picture of what's going on. Actually, what we found are that companies, because there weren't a lot of things that were going on, a lot of people went remote. They spent a lot of time and they really actually stepped back and they looked at their processes and their procedures, because maybe sales were kind of slow. So they actually had a very in-depth time to actually look at their analysis of what was working and what wasn't working. And I thought it was really interesting to be able to have that perspective here. So if you take, again, that bigger picture and now you bring it down to what are the top 5 areas where we have poor ratings. This is the more technical details of what we're seeing. They're broken down into kind of the overall ratings in here. First, on your left-hand side are our prospect score. So most companies, we find, they're not prioritizing their prospects into ABC accounts. Now, if that's kind of new to you, it's really kind of simple. It's basics of sales. You need to know what prospects have your highest probability of closing, and then also which one are the most valuable. And then what products and services are they likely to buy? You can't have all your salespeople, your sales team spending 100% of time on everybody. And so most companies, what we find, are just not doing this. they're just kind of basic training of their salespeople. They just don't have leadership that's probably overseeing that account development to make sure that there's kind of the right development there. Next is value proposition. And yes, I do. My wife does have the old phone, the old phone here. Apologize for that. It always happens when I'm doing a presentation. Next is value proposition. I said maybe we can talk a little bit about this, but companies don't really have what we call, and even in that 1 minute pitch, is that unique statement. It's that promise of what does their product or their service do? What makes them interesting? What makes them attractive to their to the business? When we do find businesses, when they do have a value proposition, what we find though is that people in their whole organization don't really know a lot about it, or they're not communicating it, or they're not articulating it in a very clear and concise or direct manner. And so that obviously can be a real problem. So again, not that they don't have a value proposition, 78%, a lot of them do have a value proposition, but maybe they're just not articulating it right. Maybe it's over-engineered, complicated, too complex. The next thing is this that businesses need help with is their sales cycle. They don't know what is needed to carry the sale to close. Some businesses, they have their cycles and their steps. Okay, we start with the lead, and then we do some discovery, and then we'll do a demo. Yeah, a lot of businesses have those steps, but they haven't documented what has made them successful in that. What are the predictive steps that have proven that can be repeated to get a close? If they don't have it documented, and then they get new sales reps in there, they can't help them. You can't help your customers understand their value proposition. How do you get to a higher success rate in closure? Things of that sort. I need to move on quicker here. Marketing spend. Number one thing we hear when we first work with sales organizations is their complaint about their leads or their lack of leads. Maybe they're not qualified or valuable. But also, as business owners, a lot of you hear, what does a marketing lead cost you? How much does that lead cost? Is it more than the sell? Is it cutting into profit margins? How many companies really don't have an alignment into the ROI on the marketing spend as something with closing their sales? And then last of all is that competitive analysis. This is where we see that very few businesses actually do very well. Maybe their marketing department is tracking their competition. The salespeople may know who their competition is. But what we're looking here on this slide and this analysis is the sales aspect of that equation. And it relates back kind of to that value proposition. What are they going up against as salespeople? What's your competition? What are they pitching? What is their value proposition to clients that you're going after as well? And how does that stand to your value proposition? What's their story? What do they think about your sell and what makes you unique and makes your company unique? All right, so we're going to dive a little bit deeper here. Make sure we don't run out of time. I'm not going to go through everything here. Obviously, we're not going to have time, but I thought some good highlights here, areas where you could probably focus in on. All right, so narrowing down on those four categories, you've got sales strategy, methodology, analysis, and organization. What we find that just a lot of small and medium-sized businesses and large companies as well are just losing a lot of the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are really the name of the game. You need to stick to them. And so the areas here where they got the greatest poor ratings, as you'll see here, here in sales analysis, this is kind of really where the data is and how they're using the data. It's a critical component. That was a 7% change there. And then sales strategy is the next largest increase in poor ratings. That's that value proposition. That's that competitive analysis, that maybe the sales isn't using it. The company or team just don't really use that very well or communicating the value proposition. So again, get a good analysis there. If we narrow it down here into those 4 buckets, then we can look a little bit deeper of what is included. It really kind of gives you a better idea of the breadth of those 48 questions that we dig into as well, and some of their detailed answers. What we found, especially in 2020, companies can be very thoughtful and purposeful when they're doing this analysis, and they're kind of reflecting on their sales organization and their processes, their company as a whole, of where they're going for their sales. And to be able to do this, it helps them understand kind of where they need to go and basically get them back on course. If you look at the top left there in sales strategy, you'll see all those things that are really on the strategic level, right? Looking at your business, at the marketplace, what makes you different, your industry positioning, your competitors, there's that value proposition again. Next is companies really struggle with sales methodology. This is your territories, your coverage, your sales processes, and yes, even that CRM or the data that you're using or not using there. Nationally, only about 50% of companies are using CRMs. Here in Utah, the numbers are actually quite higher. But what I find is that they have one, but they're not fully utilizing it the way they should be. They're not customizing it. They're not pulling data out there appropriately. They're just doing it because everyone says that you should have it. And so there's a very big difference there. Next up is businesses kind of struggle with their sales organization. This is that people side of the business. It's important, obviously, to have the right processes in place, as it is to have the right people on the bus, right? Giving them the right training. Are we staffing the right people? Are we hiring the right people? And then, are we, what are their roles and their responsibilities? All those other components to be successful on the sales organization. And then last is sales analysis. So what is it? It's the stuff that it really measures all of your success. It's your goals, your quotas, your metrics, the reports, and then to top it all off, how you're compensated, your salespeople and your team and the incentives there. Are you paying the right rewards for the right behaviors there? So let me stop there real quick and see if there's any questions or comments.
Gary, there are a few questions in the chat. And yeah, timing wise, it would be great if you'd be willing to open things up to some Q&A and discussion around what you shared. This is amazing.
Okay, you bet.
You
want to read them?
Yeah, in the chat, let's see. On the areas of poor ratings slide, do the number percentages mean that many companies do not address the issue you presented? If so, comp analysis is almost a universal problem. From Eric. Eric, do you want to share anything else on your question there? Is he on mute?
Sorry, no, I was, you were 6 screens deep there. Yeah, it's just, I'm amazed that so many companies are suffering from that problem. If I'm reading that slide correctly, it's universal.
Yeah. So this is a combination of the CEOs, the owners saying we struggle with this. Maybe they have compensations, They have job descriptions, they have the CRM, they think they have the value proposition, but they don't think that they're doing it right. They're not getting the results that they're getting. So many times I get in with an organization that say, oh yeah, we have a really healthy, a good sales incentive and compensation program. But then I ask them, okay, so what's wrong? Well, they're selling the wrong things. Well, then your compensation plan isn't written right? So there's things that need to be improved in those areas and that's what a lot of this data is showing. And again, this is a combination of the CEO saying, hey, I think we struggle here because obviously something's not going right. And then when we get in there, we just kind of reconfirm it.
Gary, a question that I had was also around figuring out the metrics that would help monitor the predictive elements of your sales cycle. So you mentioned that as being one of the top 5 areas is the sales cycle. How do you identify the right metrics that will instruct your activities on getting to a close?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times an owner wants a quick answer. And the answer to that is that we need to figure out what that is. If you've not documented all of your processes and your steps along the way, which a lot of small and medium size, so a lot of you are in startups, you're the founder, you're the best salesperson in your organization because you have that passion, you know your product, you know your customers, you've got a lot invested in this, and you're going out and you're selling and people are buying it. Then as your business kind of grows, then you're just like, okay, I need to hand this over to someone else. This is what I did. And so they start doing things. And what we find is small businesses kind of grow, and I'll see 10, 20-year businesses that I work with that they've never really documented their process and their steps. So what we have to do is then go back and be able to say, okay, what did we do to make that successful sell? And then what did we have to do to get to that point? All those intermediate, how many calls did we have to make? How many demos? How many case studies or white papers did they have to read? Do we have to have them visit our store or send them an example of our product? Whatever all those steps are those metrics. And then we can break those down to be able to say, if you do X amount of each of these metrics, then we'll actually be able to predict what your sales are going to be. The 82% of businesses don't know, small and medium size, don't know what their sales are going to be in the next quarter. They can guess, they have a general idea, but they have no way of forecasting and predicting it because they've never really broken that down. It takes a little bit of time to do it, but once you do it, you can repeat it, and then you can really accelerate your growth from that point.
That's awesome.
Hey, Gary, question for you.
Yeah.
The industries involved in your surveys and the metrics that you posted, what are some of the industries? And then help me understand what's some of the size of the average size of some of these organizations that you've worked with?
Yeah, that's a great question. 90% of these are B2B. So that's one thing. The next is the types of industries where we tend to be brought in are a lot of tech companies, a lot of manufacturing, and then service businesses. And then when you talk tech companies, it could be anything and everything from fintech to healthcare or whatever. Size-wise, most of our engagements are with businesses that have at least 1 million in annual recurring revenue, but a lot of these are between that 2 to maybe 25 million in sales, and intermingled in these are some startups as well. But we get our best data from this for those businesses that, okay, I've generated some sales. I got about 100,000 MRR, and I'm generating some sales. I know what has been transpired, and then they kind of look back. They say, okay, now I need to do something so I can repeat this. Or I did a really good job, and now it's just kind of flattening out. I don't know what to do, so I can keep that trajectory. So those that have the sales between 1 to 5 million are really kind of the sweet spot there.
Thank you.
Gary, do you have a tool that you use to document all of the steps in a sales process or sales cycle?
Yeah, it's called the CRM. And so what happens is a lot of companies will say, okay, I've got a CRM, and then they just say, use it. What you have to do is, number one, if it's price restrictive and you're getting entry level, you can get some good free ones just to get you started, so you have somewhere to document things, then start there. It's better to have that than nothing. But as you grow, you really need to get a version of your CRM that will allow you to customize it so that you can create your own processes and your own steps, and be able to monitor and look at those. So every industry is a little bit different. Even within the same industries, every business kind of does things. You also need to find out, how does your customer buy? We think that we know how we should be selling, but big piece of this is, how does your customer buy? How do they like to buy? Where are the steps? And then you need to mirror those, and they need to be documented in the CRM.
Awesome. We've got about a minute or so. Anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to throw at Gary while you've got him on the line?
I totally want to second like everything Gary is saying, because this is exactly what we see. So Gary, we set up CRMs in a lot of instances for small to medium businesses, and we do that through their client journey. Our sweet spot really does come in the sales funnel and in fulfillment, and making sure that people can pull the type of data that they need. And what I will tell you is, literally, even super successful businesses, large businesses, we've had the curtain pulled back on all of these, and there, in a lot of instances, like when they say 94% struggle with sales analytics and 92% struggle with sales methodology. I'm telling you, put all the big businesses in that as well, because they struggle with the exact same things. Those two things are huge, and really understanding how to pull your data out. Remember that it has nothing to do with the tool you choose. Your CRM is a tool. That's like saying, like, okay, the secret to your magical cake is that you use a special bowl. No, it isn't. Like, it's the ingredients and it's the recipe. And you really do need to understand, like, that your CRM is a tool, and what you're putting into it, that recipe that you're putting in, it has to be well documented. It has to be a good recipe in order to get good data out. And so anyway, I want to second everything Gary's saying. He is 100% accurate. And if you struggle with this stuff, like, you aren't the only one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite surprising what we see when we get out there. Even businesses that think they're doing really well, and they just want a little bit of help because maybe they just bought another company, say, hey, help us merge our companies, whatever. And then you find out that they're just not doing the fundamentals. And then we can really help them kind of accelerate from that point as well.
That's awesome.
Before we run out here, I wanted to offer out here. So we have a portion of the sales agility assessment, which is our 1.0. And it's just 10 quick questions. You just go online, you answer them, and then it's an automated computer system that does benchmarking on all the analysis that we've done over the years. And it'll actually send right back to your inbox how you score and maybe some recommendations, some general ideas. So if you want to email me, I'll send you a link to it. No charge, no commitment. Just if you want to take a benchmark, just send me an email. I'd love to be able to give you a tool to be able to know, okay, maybe where should I start?
That's awesome. Thanks, Gary. That is fantastic. Well, thanks everybody. We're done with our time today, but thanks for coming. Gary, this was great to have you. Really appreciate it. And you did drop knowledge bombs on us, so I appreciate that. It's a good thing. But look forward to seeing everybody next week. And thanks for playing with us today. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Taylor.